Hello there. Thanks for joining me. I am Dr. Jen, and this is My Life as a Landlord. I am so pleased that you are educating yourself by listening to today's show, or maybe you're watching it on YouTube at My Life as a Landlord. Today, we're exploring the location-specific tenancy guidelines for the great state of Tennessee. In all of my location-specific episodes, I've included a number of hyperlinks to the state Landlord-Tenant Act and all kinds of resources that I can find in this case for Tennessee and several of the other regions within Tennessee. You're going to see that. In each of my location-specific podcasts, they're set up in the exact same way, answering the same four questions. One, what are the basics of the Landlord-Tenant Act in Tennessee? Two, what are the nuances of this location? Like what's different, what stands out based on the other locations that I've studied? Three, some of the guidance about abandoned items left behind by a tenant in the state of Tennessee. And four, where do you go to get help in your local area in Tennessee? Just giving you some different guidelines for getting some help. I must tell you, though, that there are more guiding documents. There is more research that you have to do as a landlord in Tennessee. What I'm giving you here is a running start. But this may not be everything. You need to do your own research, your own due diligence for your state, your county, your province, your regional district, your parish, whatever may apply. You need to make sure you understand how to do that, but you can start right here. I want to give a plug for today's sponsor, Aloha Capital Investments LLC. If you want to know more about what Mike and I are doing in real estate investing, check out alohajv.com. Okay, for those of you who are watching on YouTube at My Life as a Landlord, I'm going to share screen and go through some of the hyperlinks. Let me get in here and share screen. Share the hyperlinks, which is that one. So you can see what I'm seeing when we are talking about the Landlord-Tenant Act in Tennessee. Now, Tennessee Uniform Residential Landlord-Tenant Act, URLTA. I don't know if there's a way they say it, URLTA. I don't know if there's a quite little nickname or something or not, but regardless. But I wanted to tell you is if you are watching this landlord-specific podcast episode for the first time, you're going to see very quickly that this gets very choppy. There isn't a bit of a flow to it. Normally, my episodes are very structured. There's a framework. We have a start, a middle, an end, a conclusion, an action item. There is a framework. For this, I have basically a checklist of highlight of things that I'm looking for, but we have to go through many, many resources to find them. And here's the thing, we may not even find them all. There's oftentimes that certain states, certain provinces, certain locations in general don't do it that way, or they just won't say anything about it, or they'll say something about something that isn't even on the list. So bear with me. This is a bit choppy, but that's okay. This again is designed to get you started. That's the whole goal. If you are a new tenant, or sorry, a new landlord in Tennessee, or even a seasoned landlord in Tennessee, I'm going to help you with some more resources and try to give you some perspective based on some of the other locations that I have studied around the world. Okay, so the first one we're looking at, remember, all tenancy laws, regardless of where you are laws. They're actually very legal. And so what you're seeing here on the screen is the Tennessee Uniform Residential Landlord-Tenant Act. This one is 2013 update. I think that's the most updated. And if there's a new one, then you can Google that in some of the sites that we've got, but this will at least, again, get you started. Let's see, this is 20 pages for this one. And this is just the table of contents, but as you can see going down, they've just, again, very legalese, terms and conditions, security deposits, address of landlord and agent, possession of the dwelling, maintenance by the landlord, access by landlord, that's important, abandonment, right? This is one of the issues that we're going to specifically answer in today's episode is what do you do if someone abandons the unit and then they've left their personal property in the unit? What do you do? So non-compliance with rental agreement by landlord, fire or casualty damage. There's a lot of stuff in Tennessee about vehicles, tons of stuff about cars. So we'll talk about all that as we go through towing of unauthorized vehicles, nuisance vehicles, and there's a couple other ones as well. So yeah, so they do talk about abusive access. This is a landlord issue that if the landlord is abusing their access to a unit, what is the tenant's remedy for it? Also, landlord retaliation. Usually there is a time frame where a landlord cannot retaliate by a number of things like rent increase, reduced amenities, or attempting eviction before this time limit is up. So we're going to see what all that is as we go through here. And just scrolling down, you can see some of this stuff. I can see some of it. They're defining everything. I don't see any interesting things. So here's another one. I have to laugh. Unauthorized vehicle means a vehicle that is not registered to the tenant, an occupant, or a tenant's known guest and has remained for more than 7 consecutive days on the property leased or rented by a landlord for residential purposes. So it's very specific on what an unauthorized vehicle. Basically, it's been dumped there. So then once you've got an unauthorized vehicle defined, then you can take action. But then they say a vehicle. Vehicle means any device for carrying passengers, livestock, goods, or equipment that moves on wheels and or runners, which I'm guessing is like a track, like maybe a backhoe or I don't know, a side-by-side that's on a track and not wheels. Interesting, but that's a vehicle, a device. Interesting. Okay, let's see. We're gonna just keep going down here. There are several other resources that are a little bit better set up, a little more user-friendly on doing this. Residential landlord registration. So this is something in Tennessee. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is the first time we've run across this, is that each landlord of one or more dwelling units is required to furnish the following information with agency or department of local government that is responsible for enforcing building codes in the jurisdiction where the dwelling units are located. So this is one you've actually got to register as a landlord, which is interesting. Now, is that true in all counties? Maybe not. It depends on your population. If you've got a question about this, definitely call Legal Aid Society. You can call your local city hall. You can call your county seat as well. If we're talking about Nashville, we're talking about Memphis, this may very well apply. And yeah, there's more information on this, but this is part of what I'm talking about, is that you need to get right in on what is required for you as the landlord. Okay, I'm just going to keep going. Prohibited unconscionability, security deposits. Here we go. So this is for security deposits. Every location seems to be a little bit different. So they say in Tennessee, all landlords of residential property requiring security deposits prior to occupancy are required to deposit all tenant security deposits in an account only used for that purpose in any bank or other lending institution subject to regulation by the state of Tennessee or agency of the United States government. So basically, you've got to have the money in a different account. Now, remember, a security deposit is not your money. It is the tenant's money. So it's got to be in a non-operating account. In this point, it doesn't say it is, it's got to be in an interest-bearing account or a trust account or an escrow account or anything. It just says a different account. Noted. Okay, so if you're wondering how to do that, set up a savings account at your regular bank that's not your operating account and call it deposits on hold. It's exactly what I do. All my security deposits are in deposits on hold. Every year you do your taxes, your accountant's going to want to know what money is in there. There you go. Just keep a running tally of what's in there. Don't touch it. There it is. Okay, we'll keep going on down the way. Okay, so this, they're talking further as I'm on page 8. This is about, looks like abandonment of the unit, general maintenance, rules and regulations, access. The tenant shall not unreasonably withhold consent for a landlord to access the property. And you cannot harass the tenant. I mean, you've got to give proper notice, but it doesn't say what proper notice is. Reasonable times, you can't go in at 3 a.m. Okay, abandonment. So on this one, they're saying tenant's unexplained or extended absence from the premises for 30 days or more without payment of rent shall be evidence of abandonment, and then the landlord is then expressly authorized to enter and take possession of the tenant's premises. So it's very specific. Tenant's non-payment of rent for 15 days past the rental due date, together with reasonable factual circumstances indicating that a tenant has permanently vacated, like somebody saw a U-Haul, somebody saw him get arrested and hauled away, or you saw their name in the paper, whether they were hurt or they're in prison or whatever. So you're actually trying to help you're trying to locate them, trying to let them know that, that you have all their items, then the tenant can store their items. This is how you serve them. Yeah, non-compliance with the rental agreement by the landlord. Everybody's got to play by the rules. Here it is. Failure to supply essential services. So essential services in Tennessee, they're saying, let's see, fair market value. Okay, essential services means utility services, including gas, heat, electricity, and any other obligations imposed upon the landlord to affect the health and safety, including running hot and cold water. And they don't say that specifically, but that includes it because it's a health and safety issue if you can't actually have hot and cold running water. Okay, it talks about what happens if you have a fire or flood, landlord liens. Retaliatory conduct is prohibited. So this is landlord retaliation. A landlord may not retaliate by increasing the rent or decreasing services or by bringing or threatening to bring on action for possession like eviction because the tenant has complained. Basically, there's a code violation or has made use of remedies. Yeah, you can't use landlord retaliation. And I think what we're going to end up doing, oh, here we go, towing of unauthorized vehicles. So this is basically you've got somebody that's put a junker on your property. It's been given up. It says landlord may have unauthorized vehicle towed or otherwise removed from real property upon giving 10 days written notice by posting the same upon subject vehicle. That's interesting because above it says 7 when it's defining an unauthorized vehicle. Here it's saying 10. But I guess you define it as an unauthorized vehicle in 7, but you have to give them 10 days notice that you're going to tow the vehicle. Interesting. Towing of vehicles. There's a ton of vehicles here. So this is, I just laugh because there's just so many details and every single location is different. Right now it's talking a lot about vehicles. I'm just going to read this because I find it amusing. A landlord may have the following vehicles towed or otherwise removed from real property, leased or rented by such for residential purposes. It's got to be a dwelling. Upon given a 10-day written notice by posting the same on the subject vehicle, that is a vehicle with one or more flat or missing tires, a vehicle unable to operate under its own power, a vehicle with a missing or broken windshield or more than one broken or missing window, a vehicle with one or more missing fenders or bumpers, or a motor vehicle that has not been in compliance with all applicable state or local laws relative to titling, licensing, operation, and registration for more than 30 days. So how we do this in our rentals on both sides of the border is we just say very simply, we can only authorize insured and operating vehicles on the property, insured and operating. And so we do not take, trailers, boats, motorcycles we'll discuss because the motorcycles can't be parked too close to the buildings. This is interesting, but this is very spelled out about how vehicles are done. Okay, so that one is the actual, what do they call it? A Uniform Residential Landlord-Tenant Act. Let's pop to the next one. So this one is this is the right book if you live in one of these Tennessee counties: Anderson, Blount, Bradley, Davison, Hamilton, Knox, Madison, Maury, Montgomery, Rutherford, Sevier, Shelby, Sullivan, Sumner, Washington, Williamson, or Wilson. Now, you got to know that the way that Tennessee has done this, and even their help stuff, all their legal aid stuff is done by Eastern Tennessee, different bungalows of Tennessee, because well, actually, I'm not really sure why. If anybody knows why, please comment or send me an email, learn@mylifeasalandlord.com, because I'm not really sure why this is so choppy in Tennessee. There's hardly any other locations. Usually it's done by metropolis. Like in San Antonio, in Bexar County in San Antonio, they'll do one for Bexar County. But this one is sort of like a part of the state, and then the other one is a different part of the state. But let's kind of go through this and then we'll see. There's a couple different ones as you go, but it's very choppy for Tennessee. So this is for if you rent a place, know your legal rights and duties. So this is tenant centric, okay? Be smart before you move in. They're talking about budgeting properly, making sure you've got security deposits for water, gas, electricity, pet deposits, and then checking for problems. How do you actually look at a unit properly before you sign a lease or move in? All these different items in writing, including a inventory condition inspection, right? Take pictures when you move in. Security deposit. A landlord may make you pay a security deposit before you move in, and unfortunately, they should get a receipt that says security deposit and shows the date and the amount paid, especially if you're paying in cash. If you're paying with check, they could say the canceled check is your receipt. This is money to pay for damage that you might do while you live there. The landlord must tell you which bank he puts your deposit in. Oh, that's a new thing for Tennessee. You got to say where the money is. Does the lease say a security deposit is non-refundable? That means that you will not get the money back when you move out. Now, this is interesting because non-refundable is not actually a deposit, it's a fee. And so this is going to be very interesting. See our booklet, security deposits. You want to take a look at this, especially for those counties. Your rent, this should all be spelled out in your lease. In fact, that's the next thing they're talking about is the lease. Make sure you're having somebody look at it for you. Legal aid will help, especially if you're a tenant. Landlords, if you need help creating the lease, you can hire an attorney. There may be other legal help as well in your local area. Ask for a written copy of the renter's rules. Renter's rules are usually things like dog leashes, pools rules, pick up your dog poo, that kind of quiet hours. There might be some other ones, regardless of what you're renting, whether it's an apartment or a single family home. Excuse me. Okay. Does the landlord want to change the renter's rules after you sign the lease? The landlord can if it would change what the lease says, but he can't make other changes to the rules. If you don't like the rules, don't sign the lease. That's a good idea. Okay, if the tenant has an email address, they can put it on the lease, and the landlord can use it to write to you and send you notices. But you've got to make sure that your email is current, and you've got to be checking your spam folder because that is an official way that a landlord in Tennessee can communicate with tenants there. Landlord can't make you give an email address. In fact, we typically don't do servicing by email. We'll do servicing by hard copy, but you can also email as a backup. I wouldn't do that as a primary. Okay, moving down, this is still the brochure. Things you must do while you live in the place. You got to pay rent on time. If you pay in cash, always get a receipt. If you're going to deposit it directly into the bank, you've got to make sure you put your name on the memo. Late fees. If your rent is late, if you pay your rent more than 5 days late, the landlord can charge you extra. The 5 days start on the day that the rent is due. If the fifth day, what if the fifth day is a Sunday or a legal holiday? Then you must pay the rent the next business day. The most a late fee can be is 10% of the rent that you owe, the most. And then, of course, there is actually another caveat if you live in public housing. I'm going to assume that you don't at the moment, but if you do, it's in there. And then basically the rest of it says, make sure you are being a good and tidy renter. They're talking about you have a right to a place that is fit to live in, and you have a right to live peacefully in the place that you rent. The landlord can't keep bothering you or keeping you from enjoying the place. Then they're talking about access, giving good, proper notice for access. Okay, so this is an interesting one. If the landlord can come in without your okay, if it's an emergency like a fire or a flood, if you're gone longer than 7 days without first telling the landlord and nobody's seen you, you die or you get too sick to answer the door and they're going to do a wellness check. You move without telling the landlord, you abandon the unit. You're sent to jail. The gas, water, or lights have been turned off and it's not the landlord's fault, or the landlord gets a court order. The landlord can also show the place to someone who wants to rent it, but this is only during the last 30 days you live there, and the lease must say it's okay. He must tell you that he's coming 24 hours ahead of time. So proper notice is 24 hours. Okay, let's keep going. Fair housing, it talks a lot about fair housing. There's a number of number of phone numbers in here about fair housing, disability information, Tennessee Human Rights Commission. If you are concerned, then you can make a phone call and ask your questions. Repairs, you've got to make sure that your landlord is keeping things safe for you. Not, yeah, so they give an example here. The landlord must keep the place fit to live and in good repair, but you can only move out so one of the remedies is you can complain, you can request a repair, but it's got to be a safety item. If it's an aesthetic item, then the landlord can fix it, but they don't have to fix it. And then you can take matter into your own hands if you've given proper notice to the landlord, or you can move out. So, but you can only move out if there is something that makes the place unsafe. Like, for example, your window blinds are broken. This does not make the place unsafe. You can't use that as a reason to move out. But let's say your hot water tank is malfunctioning and you haven't had hot water in 2 or 3 weeks. That is an unsafe issue. If you don't want to, or you can't get it repaired, or maybe you've lost your heat, something that is a safety issue, then you can move out. You can leave. Do you have to spend money because the landlord isn't fixing any things? The judge can make a landlord pay you back if you spend your own money as a tenant. Is the place unsafe? Is there problems because of poor wiring, plumbing, or rotting wood? There is a number of public works, code enforcement locations. It depends on what county you're in, but there is a bunch of questions. You can call the building inspectors depending on the location. So make sure you're educating yourself. And if you're not sure where to go as a landlord and just say, hey, I'm buying this house, or hey, this has happened, what do I do? Just call City Hall. They will tell you, or your county seat, either one, they will tell you who to call. They will help you. Is the place not healthy because of problems like garbage, bugs, or rats? This again is tenant centric. They're talking about the health department. That's one of the resources hyperlinks you'll see. Can the landlord evict you if you ask to get the place fixed, or for telling the health department or codes about the problem? Um, the landlord can evict you. So the answer is maybe, but the landlord can evict you for problems if you're behind on your rent, you caused the problems, and the landlord would have to tear down or remodel the home to fix those problems. But if the landlord tries to evict you and none are true, you can call legal aid, and there's a 1-800 number that's free, legal aid at 1-800-238-1443, and that's a free call. And that's another question, landlords, if you've got a question on how this is, something has happened and you're not sure what to do, just give them a call. They can either say, take a look at this part of the act, or look here, or look at this precedent, right? Fixing things you can't live without. What if you don't have any lights, heat, gas, sewer, sewage, plumbing? These are services you need. Write your landlord about what is wrong, put the date on the letter, and keep a copy. You can take a photo of it. So there's a bunch of different things about the vehicles. This goes back to all of the different types of vehicles and parking issues. What if your landlord can't do to make you move out? They can't change the locks. You can't set your things out. You can't shut off the lights, water, gas. They can't make you leave. And let's see, when can the landlord make you move? If you have a lease, you can stay in the place until the lease is up. So it is an abrupt ending. So if you get to at the end of a year lease and you have not renewed, or you have not requested to renew it, or they haven't told you we're going to renew, it is an abrupt end. But what if you break the lease? The landlord can make you move before the lease is up because you're going to move anyway. What if you don't have a lease? Oh, everything should be in writing. Please have it in writing. How much time must the landlord give you to move before he goes to court? So this is something talking about unsafe acts. What if you did something dangerous or threatened to? So this could be potentially either an unsafe act or a criminal act. Or what if your family or friends made the place unsafe and unhealthy? The landlord only has to give you 3 days to move out. 3 days to move out. What if you didn't pay your rent? The most of the time, the landlord must give you at least 14 days to move, and they must tell you this in writing. You may not have to move if you pay the rent or fix the problem. Let's say you've got some kind of a mischief situation going on, and they give you a warning letter, say, look, you have to fix this. And then if you do within 14 days, then you don't have to leave. Okay, what if the landlord takes you to court? What to do? And this is something interesting. You may not have to move if you file bankruptcy right away. Now, this is a strategy I've seen before, and everyone says it may not be the best move for you personally. Like if this is a tenant who's thinking, I'm behind in rent, I'm just going to file bankruptcy and I'll be okay. Be careful, because it may not be the best situation. And if you're a landlord and your tenant is going to file bankruptcy, this might change the situation, but maybe not, because you, as a landlord, you want to get that unit back to rentable state and then get it rented to a proper tenant. Let's see. So this is very interesting. It says Chapter 13 bankruptcy may work for the tenant if they're behind in rent, but the tenant must pay any past due rent within 30 days. So you might want to see, like, it may not be the best option, and there it's very specific. So if the tenant is going to file bankruptcy, it's incredibly specific on the days and how they do it. Okay. Ending your lease if you're totally disabled. So if you've had a health event and or your tenants had a health event and now they are disabled and they're gonna have to break the lease because of it. Um, so it says you can end your lease without paying extra. So there's no acceleration in this case. If you are totally disabled and your landlord won't let you make changes because of and your landlord won't let you make changes based on your disability. These changes can be things like a wheelchair ramp or grab bars in the shower, and you have been approved to move into public housing. So if your landlord is not letting you make changes because of your disability, it must be like that's a reasonable accommodation. If you can, as a landlord, you must let them do it. So if maybe the building is that old or the layout doesn't allow for that, it may be that they can't. It may not be that they're not going to let you. It's that they can't let you because of the way the building is. So just be careful on how you're doing it. But the key is that you've been approved to move into public housing so that you're not moving in with a family member. So this is again, these are all really specific. So you've got to really make sure you know the rules. And then again, this is only for certain counties in Tennessee, right? Okay. We're going to keep going through. Okay, so then this is the Legal Aid Society of Middle Tennessee and the Cumberlands. This one, how long before you can be evicted? And so it actually gives you the whole layout of how to do it. This is on page 11 of this brochure. So in these certain counties, it goes, landlord gives you written notice to move by a certain date, unless you are behind on rent and your lease says you get no warning. So be aware of that. If your lease says that you get no warning, make sure you are aware of that. So how long do you have until you get taken to court? You may have 14 days to fix the problem and stay. Basically, you need to pay your rent. Then you would get served with a warrant to go to court. The landlord is probably going to have to pay someone to serve them, or it's the sheriff, either one. In Davison and Montgomery County, the court date will be on the warrant. In other counties, you will have at least 6 more days until the court hearing. So now you're 14 days to fix it, at least 6 more days. So now you're at 20 days. Court hearing. If you lose, the judge signs a court order that lets the landlord evict you. The judge will also say how much you owe the landlord so far. Then you will have at least 10 more days to move out. And during those 10 days, you can ask the lawyer about filing an appeal, and the appeal won't keep you in your home on the 11th day after the hearing. So now we're at 14 plus 6 is 20 plus 10 more is 30. There's already been a hearing on that 11th day. So 1 month passed on the 11th day after the hearing, the sheriff will come and you and your belongings will be set to the curb, and then they'll rekey the unit. So you will actually be physically removed from the property. Okay, now that is valid in East Tennessee and these counties. Let's go to the next resource here. Okay, so this one is the Department of Health in Tennessee. So this one is talking about healthy homes. There's actually a number of resources on here. If you haven't seen this is actually pretty interesting how this all works. It talks about mold, lead, carbon monoxide, drinking water, mosquitoes, radon, pests, septic system. I mean, this is actually really comprehensive. It's very impressive, Tennessee. Very well done. But this is called healthy homes, and this is the renter's aspect. How is renting different than home ownership? Responsibilities as a renter? How do I keep my rental home a healthy home? And so 3 actions a concerned renter should do: put everything in writing, do not stop paying rent, and read your lease. You should have read your lease when you signed it. You should know it. So then it goes down. There's just a ton of frequently asked questions on how to do this. Very well done. So this is also one of the hyperlinks in the description for this episode. We're going to keep going. This one is a 2-page brochure. Tennessee Consumer Affairs Division did this one, Landlord and Tenant Act Consumer Information. Now this is not, I mean, it's only 2 pages. It's basically a trifold, one on each side. So you've got Division of Consumer Affairs, you've got all their contact information, their website, their phone numbers, their email. And it's talking about just a few things: applicability of when the act applies, basically when you're doing housing rentals, rental agreements, what a security deposit is, access by the landlord, and then maintenance by the landlord, and finally tenant obligations, and then enforcement and remedies. So it's a very simple 1-pager. Yeah. So Division of Consumer Affairs. Typically this this type goes in. I mean, you've got health, you've got all these different pockets of people that are all got involvement with the housing. Tennessee's no different. Okay, let's keep going. So this one is your rights as a tenant under Uniform Residential Landlord and Tenant Act. Now, this is legal aid of East Tennessee. So this is for, again, certain counties, because this legal aid society on this side is for legal for East Tennessee, Bradley and Blount, Hamilton, Knox, Sevier, Sullivan, Washington counties. I'm not going to go through this. This one is very similar, right? What does a landlord have to do? What does a tenant to do? You don't, what are the no-nos as a landlord? What are the no-nos as a tenant? And it's 8 pages. So this one talks about authorized vehicles versus unauthorized vehicles. Can a landlord have your vehicle towed? Nuisance vehicles. This is interesting. Let's go. So it defines, so we had unauthorized vehicle, just a vehicle, and then a nuisance vehicle they define as a vehicle which will not operate under its own power and is detrimental to the health, welfare, and safety of persons in the community. So yeah, fair housing, and then just a ton of contact information. Oh, and United Way. Cool. Okay, let's keep going. We've got a bunch more. Now, this one I Googled because I couldn't find anything specifically about abandoned items in Tennessee. So I went and I just Googled it. Now, what came up was a law firm, and they've got an article from 2018. Now, this may be something that you can call legal aid, and that's what I would recommend, because this one, I just, anything that's just by a non-governmental agent that's sort of non-biased, and I say that kind of with an asterisk, going sometimes things are biased, whether it's tenant-centric, landlord-centric, but this may be educational, but it may be outdated as well. So you want to make sure that as we're talking, it says Tennessee landlords have rights when tenants abandon the premises. Again, this is 7 years old. I'm recording this in 2025. So under the Tennessee Code, section 66-28-405, if a tenant abandons the premises, the landlord has express permission to go in and retake possession of the premises, but it depends on the timing, right? If there's indication that the person is gone, a tenant is considered to have abandoned the premises if he or she has an unexplained or unextended absence from the rental for at least 30 days and has not been paying rent. A tenant may also have abandoned the premises if he or she is at least 15 days late in paying the rent, and there is reasonable indication that he or she has permanently vacated the rental. So for example, if somebody saw a U-Haul out front and the tenant has removed all their furniture and possessions from the rental, took their name off the water, electric bills, leaving them unpaid, in this situation, the landlord has certain notice requirements. So it's a very simple article. This, I just threw it in there just so that you had another resource for there. And that may be the end of the resources for this. But let me go through let's go this one. Let's go back in this one. Okay, I've just switched back to the first Chapter 28, Uniform Residential Landlord and Tenant Act for Tennessee. And I'm just going to go through my checklist of stuff that I do, regardless of the locations, wherever in the world I am. This is the things that I'm looking for. Tenant application fee. Didn't say anything about a tenant application fee. Doesn't mean there can't be one, but you also, some places spell out what a landlord can charge or cannot charge, but I didn't see anything about that for a potential tenant applying for a unit. Grace period for late rent without penalty. We just went through that. It's 5 days, and late fee amount is no more than 10%, and it starts the day the rent is due. Security deposit method, they can pay, but it's got to be put in a separate account. I didn't see any pre-made forms. I didn't even see any wording. So if there are pre-made forms, I did not find them. So typically we have found templates in the past from different locations, whether you've got to give a warning letter or notice or termination of lease or, eviction with cause, however it is. Lease wording and details, there is items in the act that says what has to be in the lease, but nothing about pets and animals other than saying be prepared to pay a pet deposit or pay pet rent. There's no requirement of a signed lease for a landlord to deliver it to a tenant after you sign it or after you move in. Either way, I didn't see anything about that, which is unusual In other locations, it is a requirement that they have so many days to deliver a signed lease. Condition inspection at move-in, it's a good practice. It's not required in Tennessee from what I saw, but you want to make sure that you do that anyway. So, and remember, you get everything in writing and the pictures are secondary, or even better yet, take a video. But the writing part is where you have the teeth. If you don't have anything in writing and all you have is pictures, that may not stand up in court. So that's very interesting, but you want to have a condition inspection with the tenant before and then at the end as well. Standard warning letters or wording. I didn't see any template pre-made forms of any kind. Required maintenance inspections, didn't see any. Rent increases, didn't see anything about rent increases either. But because things end in Tennessee, a fixed lease ends abruptly, it appears that with proper notice, you could increase the rent when you're signing a new lease. But it did not say how much you could increase it or how often you can increase it. But if you've got a 6-month lease, it may be once a year, but it doesn't appear that there's any guidance on rent increases in Tennessee. Nothing about renter's insurance. Condition inspection at move out, we talked about this as best practices. Return of deposit to the tenant after they depart. We didn't see anything. I'm just going to scroll down here to security deposits and see if it says how long a landlord has to receive their deposits back. Okay, so it does say this. The landlord may recover costs of any and all contractual damages which the landlord may be entitled, plus the cost of any additional physical damages. So if a tenant is behind in rent, plus they've caused damage to the place, then they can deduct that out of the security deposit. Let's see, provided the cost that any physical damage may only be recovered if the damage was discovered by the landlord prior to the earlier of 30 days after the tenant vacated or abandoned the premise, or 7 days after a new tenant takes possession of the premise. So whichever is earlier. Interesting. Okay, it doesn't say a day. Wait a minute. In the event okay, so if a tenant, in the event the tenant leaves not owing rent and having any refund due, the landlord shall send notification to the last known or reasonable determined address, which may be of the rental, of the amount of any refund due to the tenant. In the event the landlord shall have not received a response from the tenant within 60 days of sending such notification, the landlord may remove the deposit from the account and retain it from free and clear of any claim from the tenant. So you want to make sure as a landlord that you're being very mindful of the days when your tenant moves out. And you do actually, here it is, you do want to do a walkthrough, end of tenancy walkthrough here. It says, upon request by the landlord for a tenant to vacate within 5 days after receipt of the written notice of the tenant's intent to vacate, the landlord may provide notice to the tenant of the tenant's right to be present at the inspection of the premises. You want to be present, right? You want to do that as a tenant and as a landlord. Okay, use of deposit as last month's rent, yes or no? That doesn't say anything, but I'm guessing no. However, if you've got any questions, actually that's not true, because they just said if there is a contractual, what did it say? Contractual damages, meaning they didn't pay rent. So you can use it as last month's rent, but it's not ideal. Landlord retaliation defined, yes. Third party housing for disputes, or do you go right to court? You go right to court in this one. Nuances in the area. The nuances in Tennessee is all about vehicles, like super specific. What do you do about abandoned items? We talked about this, about what to do when they abandon the premises, or you think they've abandoned the premises. You either have 15 or 30 days. And then where to get help in the state of Tennessee. Now there's actually 3 websites that you can go to, and these are all in the hyperlink description of this podcast. So the Legal Aid Society of Middle Tennessee and Cumberland's, and their website is www.las.org, so legalaidssociety.org. The other one that you can go to is the Legal Aid Society of East Tennessee, which is www.laet.org. And both of these are in. And then, of course, you can go to the Tennessee Consumer Affairs Division which is www.tn.gov/consumer. So you want to make sure that if you are, I'm going to stop sharing now. If you are checking this out and trying to figure out what to do, Tennessee is very choppy. It's you really want to make sure you understand what's required where, because you've got to register as a landlord in some places, and some places it may not matter. So you want to make sure you're really understanding in Tennessee what you've got to do. As we wrap up today's episode, each of my location-specific podcasts are all set up in the same way, answering the same 4 questions. What are the basics of the tenancy laws that are applicable to that location? What are the nuances of that location compared to other places we've studied? Guidance about abandoned items left behind by a tenant, and where to get help just as a starting point in your local real estate, the state or province. So this is the same format for every single location-specific episode. So if you're interested in another geographic area, you already know what I'm going to talk about, just a different location. But this episode is not all inclusive. You, especially in Tennessee, I'm actually surprised. It's so choppy that you've got to really make sure you really want to get in and talk with, maybe you want to talk with other landlords. In fact, that's your action item for today. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are that you're either new to real estate or you're new to real estate in Tennessee. Things that you can do to help yourself: read the Act. That's the one thing. I've given you a whole bunch of resources here. Read the Act in Tennessee. But plus, you can also check out your local meetup group that talks about housing in your city, county, parish, whatever, region, East Tennessee, all of that. How do you find all of those? Well, jump on social media. Sometimes they have specific Facebook or LinkedIn groups that are specific landlord groups in that area, or there's always national ones, and you'll see me in those Facebook groups as well. But they ask the questions, ask your questions in the place where the landlords in your area can help you figure out your answers. If you've learned something from today's show, please give me a review. That helps other people who need the show find the show. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Maybe you listen to this on mylifeasalandlord.com, but your input really does help. I hope you enjoyed today's show all about the state of Tennessee. Today, I'm recording this episode in Memphis, Tennessee. Why? Because real estate takes you places, and I am about to expand into Tennessee myself. So where do you want real estate to take you? Join me in the next episode live right now in the library, episode 146, about the great state of Alaska. I'll see you there.